Cache-a-maniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
The Batcap and I are back with another expert guest for another exciting installment of the GeoGearHeads. Jeep in Idaho, a fellow cacher and host of the 4x4 podcast, will talk with us about gear for your off-road vehicle. First, we have some really exciting news.
Daryl, that's a little bit of an understatement. We're kicking off a giveaway, starting now with prizes from Magellan, GeoMate for geocaching, Brand.44 Colorado, and a few of our very own. To be included in the drawing for the Magellan, Exploris GC, GeoMate Junior with Update Kit, GeoMate Large Log Cache, GeoMate Gnome Cache, and a few extras to throw in, you'll need to have your entries to us by November 28th. To receive gifts from Geocaching Brand.44 Colorado, you must reside within North America. But for the Exploris GC and the rest of that incredible geocaching gear we're going to give away, it doesn't matter where you live. Now, you must be at least 16 years of age or older on the date of your submission. As usual, this giveaway is void where rules are prohibited by law, and we'll include a link to those rules in the show notes, so head over there for all that info. Now, I'm sure you're as excited as we are, so Daryl W4, would you like to tell them how they can be entered?
I am excited since anyone who submits feedback that we can use on the show, or that we actually use on the show, is actually entered into that drawing. So all you have to do is call the 206-350-3647 and leave us your feedback in your own voice, or you can email us at geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com. If you'd like to include an audio file rather than just typing it out, that's welcome as well, and we actually prefer that because it generally sounds better than the voicemails do. Make sure, though, whatever method you're using, that you include your geocaching.com screen name and your home location, like Toronto, Canada, or Dorset, UK. We'll make the determination as to what feedback to include in the show, and that's basically just a matter of how relevant and appropriate the comment or question is for our audience. As a little tip, an audio file generally is best, and you might want to keep those to about a minute or two. If you'd rather email, about a paragraph of material is a good guideline for length. Any comment or question about an upcoming topic or a past show would be good. And next week we're hosting another one of those randomized shows, so this would be a perfect opportunity to send us your questions to ponder. Remember, the email address is geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com, and the phone number is 206-350-3647.
Now, next week, as Daryl said, we're doing another one of our fabulous randomized episodes. So get your questions in. If you don't have a question ahead of time, don't worry. Listen to those episodes, and you might have a question or comment on one of the topics that are brought up. For example, Beta.44. We'll be talking with For example, Beta.44. We'll be talking with Bruce Rees, the developer of CacheSense. I'm really looking forward to this one, as it's one app that combines geocaching and Munsies.
Yeah, and I know how much you're into Munsies and love that app, but we did get some feedback from the Winter Trio about the Munsies, and he wrote in and said just listened to the Randomized 5 show and wanted to comment on the Munsies stuff that was brought up. I don't do a lot of Munsies, but I will grab a few if they're close when I'm out caching. I have a separate POI file on my 60 CSX so I can see the Munsies icon if there was one nearby. I've used both the website that Badcop mentioned and GSAC macro, and I personally prefer the macro. The two main reasons are that I can run it unattended as part of a larger group of macros I have set up to prep all of my POI files, and it will pull in all of my captures even if they're not within the boundary filters I have set up. If you pull in multiple files from the website to cover all of your captures, but then you may need to fix some of the duplicate cache ID numbers to get them to download properly into your GPS. The Badcop mentioned he heard that it took 2.5 hours for someone to run the macro, Whoever that was must have been on a very slow machine. I have a 3-year-old Dell laptop running Vista, and it takes about 10 minutes for it to look through all 200,000 entries and add about 3,500 to GSAC. I keep a database of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and British Columbia. I do prefer the website, and I want to make it even easier. The next time you run it, copy the short URL it gives you at the bottom of the page, then create a dummy waypoint in your Munzie database in GSAC. I set that waypoint as my home chords, so it's always at the top of the list. Edit that waypoint and paste the shortcut URL into the URL field of that waypoint. Then all you need to do when you want to do an update is go to the database and double-click that dummy waypoint, and it will automatically create your customized GPX file, and you can load it directly into GSAC. Now, there's actually 3 different macros that we came across when we searched the GSAC database. So we'll include a link to all of those, and each one's a little different. But the one that Heath likes and was talking about here is called My Munsie's CSV. Now,
I agree with them, and that point to put in the dummy waypoint with the shortcut to the dfx.at website. Fabulous. I love that. Now, I have to say that I heard all of this third hand about how long it took. So I can't verify the actual run times or what they were doing. And I believe these macros have been fine-tuned since that originally happened. So with all that said, I think the macros are doing a great job. I still prefer to use the website. Like I said, dfx.at/Munzie. But, that's my workflow. So everybody's a little different. That's why there's different utilities and different ways to go. But putting them in as POIs, as you're driving around, they pop up to let you know, hey, I'm within a mile or 2 miles, whatever the flag is I set. And it works really well for me.
Very good. Now, why don't we get into our main topic tonight? And for that, we have Dan, better known as Jeep in Idaho to us cachers, but he's a host of the 4x4 podcast, and we brought him on to talk about gear for your off-highway vehicle. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hey, thanks. I'm glad to be here, and it's always good to sit down and talk about off-roading, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we talked with you about your geocaching a long time ago on the original Cache Maniacs series, so we're real excited to have you back on. And actually, I think we just talked to you not too long ago on Connections as well.
Yeah, we sure did. And I think I had started the podcast before we did the Connections, but it was after we did the initial interview. But I've been into off-roading for quite some time. I first started driving off-road on a farm when I was 11 years old, so here I am 20 years later still driving off-road and loving it just as much.
Excellent. And obviously with a caching name like Jeep in Idaho, that's a big part of your life.
It absolutely is. Drive one every day.
Nice.
So how would we get started with caching in an off-road type vehicle? Well,
I kind of broke down the things for us to talk about into a couple different groups. Specifically for geocachers, really it's becoming more popular for just anybody going off-road, is being able to power all your gadgets, because having all the adventures off-road is a lot more fun when you can capture it with a camera or be able to tweet about it, and communications are all being powered by something. So power, life support, because your off-road vehicle can get you a lot farther away from civilization a lot faster than if you were walking. So life support is really important. Then there's some specific off-roading gadgets that pertain to geocaching, and we'll talk about that. And then, of course, all the stuff that you see on a vehicle that makes it look like it's ready for the apocalypse, all the recovery gear, the body armor, extra tools, and then the camping gear. But going back to the power stuff, you guys have talked a lot about powering the gadgets in the past, and I don't know if we mentioned it or not, but other than just the 12-volt outlets, you can actually install a USB type outlet that's going to put out enough amps to power even an iPad. And so that's one of the really popular things. One of the listeners, actually a couple listeners of the 4x4 podcast, have installed marine-grade USB outlets into their vehicles. And having it be marine grade is really kind of more important than just something you would have like in a house that's not exposed to any elements.
Yeah, and certainly
Anytime,
when you're in a off-highway vehicle, you're going to be exposed to much more of the adverse conditions, whether it be the dirt or the humidity, the water. So
Exactly.
that's something that
Yeah.
you really do want to take into consideration. And even getting in and out, doing some of the caching that we do, the car gets really muddy and messy. So you can imagine how much worse that is if you're on some of those off-road trails.
yeah. And another thing people sometimes forget to consider is the vibration. When you're really hammering through a washboard road or something, everything will just shake and rattle, and dashboards will fall apart, and you don't want your power supplies to be popping out and everything. So that marine grade is really, really important on its construction to keep everything bolted down and nice and tight.
Nice. Now, is that marine grade have covers to keep the dirt out when the jacks aren't being used?
Yep, they sure do.
Okay.
And most of them have 2 outlets. I haven't had a chance to, haven't had time to pick one up myself, but I think there's if you just Google marine grade USB outlet, it'll come up as the first result I know.
Nice.
And it's got a nice rubber cover that will just pop down. And even with regular 12-volt power outlets, that's something that you want to be able to have. So I know I've got 2 covers for the 2 outlets on the dashboard in my Jeep, and if I'm not using it, I keep it covered up, so that way when I do need to use them, they'll actually work. And they're not all gunked up with dust and all the stuff that is associated with being outside.
Exactly.
So another thing that I just recently picked up was the Goal Zero a solar kit. And this is really kind of important because then you can power your device a little bit without putting the additional strain on your vehicle system. And I've got a link here in the show notes where I actually did a review of the Guide 10 Plus Adventure Kit. And what it is, it's a solar panel it's constructed different than a lot of the other more traditional solar panels. Instead of a polycrystal type setup, it's more efficient, so you'll get more power out of the device even with less sunlight. So even later in the evenings or earlier in the mornings, or even if you're not in exactly direct sunlight, it'll still pull quite a bit of juice. And the little solar panel cranks out between almost 13 to 14 volts, so you're getting better than 12-volt power. And so it'll power a lot of devices, and it's got the connectors so you can plug a 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter in there, or the preferred method is with USB. And it comes with a battery pack, so it's got 4 AA rechargeable batteries that come with this specific kit, and you can power those up or recharge them just using the solar power. Or if I run down the batteries in my Galaxy Nexus, I can plug those batteries into there, and it comes in very handy. So you've got grid-free power, even if the sun's not out. I can, plug stuff into the battery pack and then recharge it once the sun comes back up.
I've drooled over those kits myself. I saw them at REI and then at my local Costco. So they're impressive units.
They are. I was looking at them for a long time, and I kept thinking, how often am I going to be away from power?
Exactly.
And what tipped me over the edge was I was down at Fort Irwin outside Barstow in Southern California, and this is at the edge of the Mojave Desert. So endless sunshine virtually, especially during the summer. You've got 15, 16 hours of sunshine at least, and never a cloud in the sky. And what do you know? I was away from power, so I went ahead and spent the money, and it was totally worth it. It's kind of a limited use. I don't use it all the time, but whenever I'm spending a lot of time outside or away from home, way out in the backcountry, that's something that I'll definitely use.
Good. Now, what about batteries?
Well, batteries for your gadgets, you guys have gone so far into depth, I'm not gonna be able to add anything there, but there is a dual battery kit that you can get for nearly any vehicle that you want. And those dual battery kits are really important because The last thing you want is to be 50 miles from nowhere and not be able to start your car, especially if you did that just to keep your GPS charged up or your cell phone. Now you really have nothing to go by to help yourself out. But what a dual battery kit will do, the controller will isolate a starter battery away from a auxiliary battery. So you can use your auxiliary battery to power all your devices and whatever it is. If you have you can get a refrigerator freezer to be able to have some ice cream on your 5th day out in the middle of nowhere. But if you can't start your vehicle, then you're kind of out of luck. So having your starting battery isolated away from your auxiliary battery, that'll be able to let you enjoy your ice cream in the middle of nowhere and still be able to start your rig and get back home.
Yeah, I could see that being really important even for people who aren't doing the off-road thing, but rather just camping out of their car or a minivan or whatever, so that you have some power at those more rustic campsites.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the controllers on those dual battery kits is that as soon as you start up the vehicle and put the charge going back into it from the alternator, it'll go ahead and charge that auxiliary battery right back up. And the really nice ones have a monitor, so you can tell when your battery's getting too low or when it's fully charged. It'll go ahead and shut off that connection so that the battery is not being overcharged. So make them. The problem is usually finding a good spot to put a second battery. If you open up the hood in your vehicle, odds are you're not going to find just an extra spot sitting around that would fit a second battery. So that does take a little bit of customization. So,
no, it's not like the 75 Monte Carlo where you could fit 7 or 8 batteries in that engine space.
Yeah, I remember my very first truck, a 68 Dodge D100, had a little straight 6 engine, and you could actually have 2 people laying inside the engine bay with the trunk with the hood closed and not be touching the engine.
Wow.
Just a ton of room in there. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you could, I suppose.
But you could. It sounds like the voice of experience there.
Yeah. Well, the next thing I talked about was the life support, and you want to be able to have your food and your water out there. And being able to replenish your water supply is really important. I don't know, have you guys mentioned the backpacking type of water purification and water filter systems before?
No, that is something that we should probably actually look into for one of our future shows.
Well, what it is, there's a lot of different ways, and usually they'll have just a little pickup tube that has a filter on the end just to filter out the big gunk. And then it's got the main filter inside a pump that's got a handle, and then it feeds out into a little tube that has a screw-on lid that will screw onto like your Nalgene water bottle. And then you just sit there by your stream and crank away on the pump until you fill up your water bottle. And that'll filter out all the Giardia and all the microbes that would get you sick. But that's just going to filter one little water bottle at a time. And if you're with a large group or if you're going to be traveling long distances, maybe you don't want to spend a whole lot of time stuck by a little stream. Like if you're out in the Mojave, for instance, and your next water point is not going to be for quite some time, you might spend a long time trying to sit there and replenish your water. So there are some gravity-fed water filtration systems, and it's usually like a 2-container system, but it does it all by itself. You don't have to, gravity is free, and it doesn't take any effort. So you just set up your two-jug system and let gravity do the work, and you can drive on down the road and go about your business. So I haven't had a whole lot of experience with that kind, but I know they do work, and they will filter quite a bit of water without minimal effort.
Yeah, that is something that you probably really want for those longer trips, because water is a fairly large, heavy object to try to carry along with you.
Yep. And on that note, water storage, being able to actually store that water. I don't know, have you ever tried to carry? I'm sure you've got the Camelback where you can have 1.5 liters. 1.5 liters will only last you so long, especially in a hot environment where you're working hard, especially hiking. But what I use is a 7-gallon Reliant water jug, and it's a giant cube, and it's got a spout built into it, and it's built of a very heavy plastic. So, I mean, I've dropped it from about 4 feet, and it's hit the rocks and skid down the road, and may have a little dent, but it's not leaking. And that's the important thing. It'll still hold all 7 gallons of water. So
Nice.
you definitely want to get something that's sturdy.
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. It's kind of like the gas tanks. You don't want those to be puncturing when you accidentally drop it out the back of the car.
Nope.
Yep. I know many individuals who have had to bring their trip to a quick stop or completely change plans just because of water availability. And if your water supply runs out, that's a bad day.
Yeah.
So there's also a lot of military-grade water cans that you can pick up from surplus stores or just order brand new. Spectre makes some good ones, and of course Reliant, like I mentioned. Reliant's a really popular one and tried and true. And there's one thing that you don't want to mess around with, it's your water.
That's right. Water's life. But now when you're out there, you can't rely just on the ice cream in the freezer that you brought along.
True. And I think I've mentioned it, I've called it into some previous shows, being able to cook a really good meal out in the backcountry and enjoy some real food is the best way to change your outlook on life. Mm-hmm. And so I've got a link in here to a chuck box, and this is kind of similar to what I use for myself. However, this is a very elaborate type setup. Basically what a chuck box is, it's your portable kitchen. It has everything in it that you need. Your pots and pans and utensils, basic supplies like napkins, paper towels, and spices and things that you will always use every time you try and prepare a meal. I don't try to fit my little camping stove in there because it's a little bigger than I wanted to make the chuck box for, but I built my own custom one with little drawers and compartments. And having all that available so that I can pick it up and throw it in the back of the truck and drive away it's a huge benefit. And it also makes getting it out a lot easier. I know a lot of people just make, hot water and oatmeal packet, and that's fine and good if you're trying to get the sleepies out of your eyes and it's 30 degrees outside.
You know the way I cook, don't you?
You are not alone. There's lots of people that do that. However, I've been doing this long enough. I've got my grown-up taste buds, and I like enjoying some actual really good food. Mm-hmm. So, that's one of the things on the 4x4 podcast. If anybody really wants to check it out, that's one of the things that we focus on is how to eat good in the backcountry. We've got a special segment called Outdoor Edibles, and there's so many people that are focused in on preparing excellent food. Overland Gourmet is one of my friends, and he has a whole business just on recipes and gear for cooking outside. So one of the things to try and keep in mind when you're doing food outside like that is don't try and make a new recipe just for outside. You can just take whatever your favorite recipe is from home, and you can modify it and try and figure out how to cook it easily outside when you don't have all the same amenities as you do in your kitchen.
Well, I took a look at that, and it doesn't look much different than my kitchen, that chuck box. It's really impressive. Yeah, it's really impressive.
So, and there's some other gear that, would definitely go along with that. Like I am a huge fan of Dutch ovens and cast iron cookware because of its durability. And there's so many things that you can do with it. But like I say, it's something that I can practice with at home. I can throw it in the oven and practice cooking my outdoor meals in the comfort of my own home and try and work the kinks out there so I'm not, you don't want to go spend 2 hours preparing a really great meal and enjoying the campfire and then open it up and it all tastes horrible.
How true.
So definitely practice cooking your recipes and then just modify them. All right. Well, the next thing I was going to bring up was the gadgets, and everybody knows about the handheld units and all the different, the Garmin 60 CSX and the Montana and everything. But there's a lot of other things that you can do for off-roading. One of my favorites is Fun Treks. They have some really great products that are specifically made for off-highway vehicles, whether it be even ATVs and motorcycles. And what it is they've got digital mapping products that you can just pop the little card into your Garmin Nuvi, and all of a sudden you've got topographic maps with the tracks for specific off-road trails that accompany some of their guidebooks. So you can learn about the history and some of the surrounding areas, stay on the trail, and still know the topographic lines. So if you want to go hiking off the trail or something, you won't get into too much trouble. So is that something you guys have checked out before?
This is the first I've heard of it. This is fabulous. I'm looking at the website now.
Oh, yeah. Fun Treks Guidebooks. And they're actually based out of Monument, Colorado, just down the road from where I grew up. So I didn't even know about it until I had moved away. But they're really great guides, and they've covered so many different areas. It's amazing.
So it's ATVs and four-wheelers?
Yeah, and they've got
the trails. And four-wheel drive? Sorry.
Yeah, four-wheel drives. They've got them all marked, so you know a kind of a difficulty rating. And easy, moderate, and actually, like the Diamond, they just try to use the same ratings as you would for a ski trail, so it's easy to understand. But then they've also got them identified, whether it's for a lightly modified SUV, stock SUV, highly modified, and even the side-by-sides. I've noticed those are getting a lot more popular. It's an easy way to get into an off-road vehicle and not destroy your daily driver, or trying to build up a huge Jeep that's very purpose-built.
Right.
So, Fun Treks guidebooks. It's funtreks.com, and just tons of stuff. I recommend anybody that's going to be exploring the backcountry, check them out. Especially if you're in Arizona, Utah, California, Colorado. I think they're soon going to be expanding into New Mexico and some other areas. So mostly they're for the Western United States, because that's where most of the great off-roading is. But I've recommended to them they also check out like Washington and Oregon, because there's tons of great trails up in that area too, and Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. So.
Yeah, I've heard about these kind of things all over the place, but it's really tough to find ones that actually work with a lot of the more common devices. So, this is pretty cool. I'd love to get something like this for my Nuvi, especially if it were for something other than, like the trails, but, more for like the, casual drives down the coast on the weekend kind of stuff. Give me some extra information that I normally wouldn't have. And I've looked at some of those kind of things for like the iPad or the iPhone, and just none of them really seem to add up.
Yeah. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to play around with them a whole lot, because I spent most of my time now on the East Coast or out of the country. But while I was down there in California, I did explore a couple trails, and I didn't have my Garmin Nuvi with me, but they also have all their same, maybe not all of them, but most of them are available through Every Trail. And Every Trail is an app that goes on iOS and Android, and it's amazing. You can take pictures, it geotags them, adds them onto your little track, and then you can share them later on through Facebook or Twitter, or just keep them in your own little personal diary. So that's one of the, I think the next topic then was tablet maps and, smartphone apps. And Every Trail is definitely one that you should check out, just because of the way they partner up with Fun Treks. So
nice. I'm going to look into that.
Have you guys tried playing around with Every Trail before?
I did a long time ago, but I haven't pulled up the app in ages. Pretty much since they started charging for the service, I stopped using it.
Oh, I didn't even realize they charged. I know there is a free level, and I think that's what I use.
Yeah, I don't remember what the tiers were, and they may have gotten rid of it and gone sponsorship or something again. But, it was beta years ago kind of thing, and then they started charging for it. It's like, yeah, I've never really used it that much anyway.
Now that I look at the website, yes, I've used Every Trail. I haven't actually used it. I've explored the website. Let me put it that way.
I've done partnerships with a number of other companies, so even if you haven't used Every Trail directly, REI had some apps that used Every Trail, and Someone else did as well. So people who haven't necessarily gone to the Every Trail site, downloaded the apps or something like that, may have used Every Trail and not even known it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's a great product. And next up, just moving on from the tablets, one of the things you want to do is keep your gadget secure. And like I mentioned, those washboard roads and large bumps will turn your gadget into a projectile in no time. And that's definitely not something you want to happen, especially with a fragile, the glass screen on it or something. It'd be a bad day. And I really like the RAM mount system. It's just very secure. And I've got a link in the show notes here to the installation that I did. I've got a Samsung Galaxy Tab 7, the first generation one. And it just seems, I really like that better than the iPad for the size, because an iPad takes up a huge amount of real estate in a vehicle. And the little 7-inch tablet seems like just the sweet spot for a navigation app. And I can tuck it down out of the way with the RAM mount, the way it pivots around on those the ball joints. It's awesome. So I've got mine permanently mounted on the dash, but when I'm not using it, I can very easily give the knob a couple turns and pop it off and store it in the back seat, so it's nice and out of the way. But I usually keep it on there because it's just an awesome way to keep my tablet out of the line of view, so I can see what's outside the windshield, but still have it easily accessible and I can see it, and it's great.
Well, one of the things I like most about the RAMs is that they're so versatile. I have the RAM mount gear on my bicycles. I've got them on the in the car, and you can take the same mount and swap around. Almost anything that you get, device-wise, they'll have something to support it. So you can reuse the same mount. I have the same mount on my bicycles that I've had for years. Yeah. Because I can just go and put a new adapter on there for the 62 when I upgraded from the 62 or from the 60 to the 62. I went to the PN40 and that fit on there beautifully. In fact, Delorme was working with the RAM and actually sold the RAM mount as their car kit.
Nice. And the beauty is, if you have that RAM mount in multiple vehicles, you can just take your device off, snap it in the next vehicle, and you're good to go.
Yep. It's so easy to interchange it. And like you said, for so many different devices, I've even played around with they've got some camera mounts to where it'll screw into the socket that's on the bottom of a camera. So you can use it as a tripod, and their suction cup is excellent. One of the things that I've been playing around with it a little bit is that camera mount, and it's just so strong. So I really can't wait to get my hands on the adapter so that I can use the RAM mount with the GoPro camera.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Stick a GoPro on the side, and you're good to go. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the GoPro cameras. However, their mounting hardware and the arms are a nightmare to get adjusted just the right way.
Yeah, they are.
So that's one of the things. I know they're working on it. I don't know if they've actually released it yet, but that's definitely in my future.
Yeah, well, I know that they just released all new GoPro cameras, and I'm really excited about some of those. Not that I'll be getting them anytime soon, but they're nice-looking hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Hero 3 is going to be an amazing system. Hopefully I'll get my hands on one very soon.
4K video, that's huge.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is it's 4K video at 15 frames a second. So essentially it's like slowing down real life or speeding up real life when you play it back. So it's going to be kind of that fast motion kind of thing, which is really cool, kind of that time lapse. I love doing those kind of videos, especially when you're on the road, because it's so boring if you watch that stuff in real time.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
I'm looking forward to trying one of those with a sunrise or a sunset or something like that, because, like I said, with the off-road vehicle, you can get out to some very remote destinations and see some amazing sights. And then being able to capture, an entire sunset in a shorter amount of time, that's awesome.
Yep.
Definitely.
Or storms moving in.
or or that.
Yeah. Sorry, it's Washington and fall. All I can think of is storms.
Oh yeah.
Well, Dan, you had mentioned some recovery gear and such that you really want to have along with you if you're in one of those off-highway vehicles.
Absolutely.
What kind of gear do you really suggest as a minimum to have?
Well, as a minimum, I would really recommend having a second off-road vehicle. I mean, having a backup, somebody to help you out, or just kind of provide some, that extra oomph if you need it. Be able to throw a tow strap on. That's really ideal. But if you can't have a second person, one of the important things to have is a winch, a good sturdy winch that's mounted to your vehicle correctly. That'll pay huge dividends. And what a winch is, for somebody who doesn't know, is some of them have steel or aluminum cable, and some of them have a rope, a special kind of rope, and you can run it out, attach it to something, be it a tree or a rock, and then use a remote control and reel that rope in so you can pull yourself out. You'll find them on like the back of a wrecker, like a flatbed wrecker. They use them to tow cars up onto the flatbed, if you're not quite sure. And there's some important things to realize about that. Is you want your winch to be powerful enough to actually pull your vehicle up, and you'll determine that based on the weight of your vehicle. If your vehicle weighs, I won't do the math here, but you want the winch to pull 1.5 times the gross weight of your vehicle.
So when you have it loaded up with everything, you don't have to unload your vehicle to get it out of the mud hole.
Well, and that's the thing is, when something's stuck in the mud, that creates a lot more friction.
That's
so the winch will have to overcome not just the weight of the vehicle, but that additional friction or suction if you're stuck in the mud. So that's a really important thing to consider. So, for instance, a 4-door Jeep Wrangler is a really popular one right now. And it used to be like the older Wranglers, they could get away with an 8,000-pound winch. That doesn't mean the vehicle weighs 8,000 pounds. That just means that the winch, when it's on the first wrap of the cable on the drum, will pull 8,000 pounds. So, but for a 4-door Jeep Wrangler, you'll have to have a 9,500 pound winch because it's a heavier vehicle. If you drive a Dodge Ram, you'll have to step up to something like a 10,000 pound or a 12,000 pound, depending on the weight of your vehicle. So, and you can always go heavier, and it's not going to hurt anything.
Right.
Just making sure that it's mounted really well, because I've actually seen somebody's bumper come right off because the winch just pulled it off the end. So that's definitely not something you want to have happen out in the middle of nowhere.
No, you want the whole vehicle, not just the bumper.
Correct. Or the bumper will get unstuck, and the rest of you is still just in trouble. Another way to get unstuck, though, is a tow strap, like I mentioned, and you'll want to have that attached to another vehicle. And a tow strap is different than some other kind of straps. So some people may not realize a tow strap works kind of like a rubber band. It has some elasticity to it. So the first vehicle will kind of get a running start at it, and it's not just going to be a huge shock load to the vehicle. Like a chain does not stretch at all. So you can pull with a chain, but you don't want to get a running start at it.
Right.
In that kind of scenario, you want the first vehicle to slowly pull forward until that chain is taut, and then slowly pull. Whereas the tow strap, you can really get a lot more energy to get a vehicle unstuck. But there's also straps that don't have any elasticity to them, and that's the kind you'd use if you were to wrap a strap around a tree and then attach the winch cable to it. So, let's see. Of course, like I said, you want to have the bumpers, something that's really going to be sturdy. And this is not to protect you from car accidents or anything, but I have gotten my bumpers tangled up with rocks and trees and things like that. And you don't want to have it damaging the rest of your vehicle. For instance, getting into the body armor stuff, having some protection around the door sill of your vehicle. If you're off-roading, it is highly probable that your door sill will come in contact with a rock or a tree, and if it puts any kind of dent in that area of the vehicle, it's going to put pressure on the door itself, and then you can't get out. So having that protection there will not just preserve the looks of your vehicle, but it will preserve the functionality allowing you to get in and out of your vehicle later on. And if you were to see my Jeep, you would see probably a dent or scratch on every single body panel. Not something I'm too concerned about because, it's clear by looking at it, it is not made for show. It sees a lot of off-highway time. But a lot of people are really concerned about that. And so you can get body panels that essentially bolt on or rivet on to the existing panels. And having a 3/8 inch thick piece of steel body panel will definitely give your vehicle some more resiliency.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately, it also
learn
gives it more weight, which means a bigger winch and lower fuel economy too.
Yep, and that's something that all
does factor in if you're going to be on the road. And I actually did some work for Jeep at the tail of the last century, and interesting conversations used to come up at some of the events with the journalists there, like the guys in the Humvees who were taking those off-road and getting stuck in trees, and the guys who didn't account for the extra weight and ended up sinking their vehicles because they put too much on them and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I guess I should have mentioned. One of the most beneficial modifications you can make to your off-road vehicle is yourself. If you get some proper training on how to operate it and be able to become more familiar with the vehicle and how it operates, odds are you'll be able to drive a whole lot more places without having to use your recovery gear. So,
good point.
One of my recommendations is a lot of people will go ahead and build up their vehicle and spend all their money on that and realize that they still don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
so
or
I always
that they
recommend
got the wrong gear for whatever situation they're trying to cover.
Exactly.
If you're going out on a lot of the woodland trails out here, the rock hopping type gear isn't going to do you a whole lot of good and actually gets in your way because it ends up being too bulky and that kind of stuff.
Yep. But some really good training from a professional off-road driver will pay huge dividends. And if you learn to drive your vehicle with like open differentials and without it being lifted and having larger tires, you'll really develop that finesse that you need to be able to, tiptoe over and around and through all the really rough terrain. So, get some good training.
Yeah, definitely some good advice there. Well, thank you again for joining us. It's you've given us a lot of great information so far. But if people are really into the off-roading and want more information, where can they find out more about your show that you're doing?
Well, it's easy. It's the 4x4podcast.com, and it's 4x4 like you would see on the side of a pickup truck. It's nice and easy to get to. And I've gone into over the 1 year mark, so I still have a lot of places to grow and a lot of great new people to meet and talk to. The problem is I just don't have enough time to talk to everybody that I want to. So there's a lot out there in the off-roading world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely not the easiest thing to do to get everyone that you want on the show and get our schedules meshed and everything else, as we well know.
Yeah, I think I've got about 6 or 7 more interviews lined up. I just can't put a time to them because I don't have the time. I've got interviews for 2 more shows already recorded. I just got to record the rest of the episode.
Nice.
So.
And we'll definitely include links to that in the show notes.
Awesome.
And for everyone else who's listening, don't forget that we did start that contest right now. So get your emails or your voicemails in. And that's 206-350-3647 for the voicemails. And for emails, it's GeoGearHeads@CashManiacs.com. And next week we're doing the randomized show, so that's going to be the perfect opportunity for any of these comments that you might want to throw at us, any kind of questions. And we really love doing those questions for the randomized shows, because it gives us something to talk about and find some answers and share some information with you.
We do love those tough questions. So make them hard for us. Make us work for those questions. Now, you can check out the Cachamaniacs website at cachamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads at cachamaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachamaniac shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cachamaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2012 by Daryl Wattenberg, all rights reserved.